folks about 5 minutes to find us. And so I don't want to belabor the time. I want to respect your time. Thankfully, with technology, we're able to go back and see this on the replay. For those of you who may not know, all of the past Shake the Table episodes are on YouTube. They're on the Shake the Table YouTube channel. So if you have not gone over to visit, do that after tonight. Go ahead and subscribe. And actually, there is a place there on YouTube where you can click a little bell. It's up in the top right-hand corner. Click that bell, and what will happen is that'll put you on our list so that you get notifications every time we put a new video there, okay? I really want to grow that YouTube channel because eventually, with this time of teaching, it's going to go live over there on YouTube. And I think I have to have a certain number of followers or something like that. I'm still trying to learn all of that. But if you all would, after we finish this episode on tonight, go on over to the YouTube channel and subscribe, share the link, go back and look at some of the old Shake the Table videos. We've covered a lot of ground, and I think you will be pleasantly surprised with some of the content that's over there. So I thank you guys in advance for doing that, okay? So again, thank you all for being here on tonight. It's the first Thursday of the month. It's amazing how it just seems like the year is just whizzing by. It's September already. Can y'all believe that? And I'm pretty excited about it. Anytime I start to see football on television, I know that it's going to get cool. Actually, it was only in the 80s today in Dallas. And for us, that was like a whole cold front. And so I'm pretty excited. Before you know it, Thanksgiving will be here and Christmas will be here, and we'll be starting all over again in 2025. But thank God that we are here on tonight. Another opportunity to share. And I'm pretty excited about this subject on tonight. I was not necessarily planning to do this, but I am a believer that those of us who are in the people business, particularly those of us who are in the healing arenas, we've got to be attuned to what's going on, and we've got to position ourselves to be responsive to what's going on in the culture, what's going on in the lives of the people that we are called to. And this past week, if you've been paying attention, there was this new movie that came out on Netflix that just really had the internet all abuzz. And as I was seeing some of the commentary, some of the responses and reactions and so forth, I thought, wow, I need to really address this. We need to really have a conversation about it. Because I saw some things that really concerned me. And I think maybe you all did too. And I want to really hear your thoughts as we go through this conversation on tonight. Now, I want to give you all the disclaimer that I give you just about every month. There's no way that we can have an exhaustive conversation about this topic tonight. We're talking about the dichotomy of Christian fear. It's almost oxymoronic, Christian fear, but hopefully I'll be able to bring some light to what I'm talking about here. So I don't want you to have the expectation of me that I'll be able to touch on everything, but I do want to raise some things for your consideration, for you to think about and pray about and study in your own time, because it is my desire that after this conversation, you'll be able to pick something from it that will hopefully make your life better, okay? So I've made some notes on tonight. Hopefully I will get through all of them. And again, I want to hear your thoughts, so you're open to commenting. If there's something that you hear that resonates with you, we're not in church. We don't have a Hammond B3, but you can say hallelujah or give me some claps or whatever it is that you might do. to affirm that it's something that makes sense to you. Because again, I want to be relevant. I want to make sure that the things that we are talking about are really meaningful. Okay. So tonight, from the preamble, you understand that the conversation we're having tonight, I've titled it The Dichotomy of Christian Fear, but it really is rooted in the movie called The Deliverance. It was on Netflix this past week. It was written and produced, I think, by Lee Daniels. Well, I know Lee Daniels produced it. I'm not sure of all the writing and all that kind of thing, but it's a Lee Daniels production. Had some pretty good actors in there. I mean, Andra Day and Monique and Glenn Close. And again, for you all that saw the movie, Glenn Close, she really did her thing in this movie. Anjanae Ellis, for those of us who love Maddie Mouse Clark, she played Dr. Clark in the Clark Sisters movie. So there was some really great talent in the movie. And I want to talk about it. I want to talk about it for 4 reasons, okay? For 4 reasons. The first reason is because it's on people's minds. People are thinking about this. And so I think it is ripe for conversation. The second reason I want to talk about it is because I believe that the subject matter really is relevant for our lives, our spiritual lives. The third reason I want to talk about it is that there is a theological issue here that we need to really, really deal with. And again, for those of you who know anything about my ministry or who have been following Shake the Table for any length of time, you understand that I generally address subject matter from a theological perspective. And I want to continue on with that on tonight. So again, it's on people's minds. It's relevant. It is a theological issue. And the other reason I want to talk about it, this particular issue, is because I actually believe that this is a quality of life issue. One of the things that keeps me up at night and has me tossing and turning concerning ministry and concerning you all is I want us to have good lives. I want us to enjoy life. I want us to have abundant lives. And too many times our religious experiences, our journey on this Christian journey, sometimes it can be somber and heavy and repressive. And I want us to get that off of us. Life is too short to be burdened down with things that are unnecessary. And so I see this as a quality of life issue. And I think if we come to a place of enlightenment or better understanding about some of the subject matter that we'll touch on today, it's just going to make life better for us. Okay. And so that's how I'm coming on tonight. Okay. And so when I talk about it being on the minds of the people, pop culture has this amazing way of telling us or showing us where we are. It could be a billboard. It could be a television commercial during the Super Bowl. It could be a new song that comes out. It could be a viral video. There was a viral video that came out with, oh God, what's her name? Lisa Page. Lisa Page used to sing in Witness a long time ago. Yeah, 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 yeah. It came out this week. And even though there was nothing about that we would think would be deep and spiritual and theological and all of that, people's commentary about a little viral video tells you a lot about where people are and what they're thinking about. And so I said all of that to say this movie brought to the forefront something that a lot of us have had various experiences with. Basically, the movie is about a woman named LaToya Ammons who moved into this house, her and her 3 kids, in Gary, Indiana. The movie said they were in Pittsburgh, but, this is based on a true story. She moved into this house in Gary, Indiana, and all of these paranormal things, supposedly, allegedly, began to happen when she moved into this house. And now I'm not here to critique the movie. That's, because different people liked it. Some people didn't like it, whatever. I'm not here to critique the movie. What I'm here to do is to talk about the subject matter. Okay. So she moves into this house and there's this paranormal activity that's going on that she really can't explain. And basically, it's an exorcist movie, something that we've seen 1,000 times. Hollywood has been making exorcism movies for as long as I can remember, from the Amityville Horror to Annabelle to any number of movies, number of movies that you can name. The difference here, I believe, is that this particular movie centered a black family. Okay, it was. Some people were calling it black horror. I didn't really think it was scary, but again, it's a black exorcism movie. Okay, and it's got black people in an uproar. Like, I was shocked by it, as a matter of fact, to see the number of people that were like, "Oh, I can't watch that movie. It's demonic, and I don't want to have that on in my house, and demons get in my house, and all of these things." And I want to be really very careful right here how I say what I am saying, because I don't want to diminish. I don't want to diminish where people are. I want to be respectful. Okay, I'm going to dig into why I believe some people responded the way that they did. And the truth is some of us have been so programmed and indoctrinated, it was an involuntary response. Okay. But there were people who were literally saying, I will not watch this movie because it is demonic, and I don't want my television to be a portal for these demonic influences to come into my home. Did anybody else hear that? If you were anywhere on social media, I'm sure at least you saw it once or twice. And so, again, this is something that's real. For some people, it's real for them. And so in hearing that, I wanted to take some time to really deal with it, because again, like I said, it's relevant. It is something that we're dealing with right now. And in the context of Pentecostalism or Neo-Pentecostalism, particularly Black Pentecostals and Neo-Pentecostals, it's foundational for us. I'm a Pentecostal, for those of you who didn't know. And the conversations about transcending the natural world, or transcending this human, earthly, natural dimension, and functioning in the realm of spirit, this is something that we've got to get a better understanding of. Okay? And because I am a practical theologian, what my job is to examine, to look at what people profess to believe, what they say out of their mouths, what they say they believe, and then look at their actions, because your actions actually speak more specifically to what you believe than your words. Your actions tell me what you really believe. And so the delta that exists between what we say we believe and how we actually live our lives, that's where the dichotomy comes in. Because for us to profess that we believe in this all-powerful God, but our actions demonstrate that we're afraid of demons, or really afraid of anything that in some sort of way either rivals or supersedes the power of God, it creates this chasm or this dichotomy. And that's what I want to be able to deal with. So that's when I talk about it's relevant. Practical theology is relevant for all of us. So we want to make our actions line up with what we say we believe. Are y'all following me? I hope I didn't go too deep on that. Okay. So that's what we want to look at. We want to look at that place in the middle between what you say you believe and what your actions tell us you believe. Okay. The third reason I want to talk about this is because it is theological. It is a theological conversation. Whenever we have a discussion about Christian fear, we're making actually a whole series of theological statements. And again, as a practical theologian, examining that delta, that when things don't line up, we got to really, really dig into why that is and try to root that up. Because again, what you are afraid of speaks to what you really believe about God. So it makes it theological. And then the last thing, like I told you, it's a quality of life issue. There are too many people of faith, in my opinion, too many Christians, too many people who call on the name of Jesus walking around fearful. They're just seem like afraid of everything. And it shows up in our families. It shows up in our relationships, whether they are platonic or romantic. It shows up even at church. You ever recognized, and again, it depends upon the kind of church you go to, but sometimes it seems like even in our church services, we spend more time addressing the devil and demons and witches and spirits than we do in actual worship and adoration of the holy God. And again, my position as a reformer, as a preacher, teacher, pastor, covering theologian, whatever it is that you call me, there is something that I have to say to try to uproot that. And so we're going to deal with all of those things. Okay. So let's run on through here. The movie, talking about the movie. Okay. We see that the main character, I forgot what her name is, but she was played by Andra Day. Okay. The main character, she moves into this new house. Okay. Her and her 3 kids, they move into this new house. And as soon as they get there, she says that these weird things start to happen. Okay. And just really kind of fast forwarding through this, ultimately, the film leads us to believe, or leads us to the conclusion, that what's going on in this house is demonic. Okay. That there's something going on in this house, and it's coming after her children, and it's tormenting the whole family. Okay. Now, I want to introduce some terms to us on tonight. Okay. When we have this conversation about demons in the house, demons possessing or oppressing or harming, when we talk about the activity of demons, we're talking about something called demonology. Okay, demonology. Like we have theology, that is the study of God or the talk about God. Theo, God, ology, the science over the study of. Demonology is basically, again, the study of demons, what we believe about demons, talk about demons, okay? So demonology is the study of demons within a religious belief system or mythology, okay? Depending upon the context, it can refer to studies within theology, religious doctrine, or occultism. In many faiths, it concerns the study of the hierarchy of demons. Okay, so different faith traditions, different sects of people have different demonologies. Is that making sense to you all? I'm going to go deep, but then I'm going to come back up for air in a minute, okay? And so when we have this conversation that we see presented to us in the movie, we are actually talking about demonology, okay? It's important to note whenever we start having conversations that we try as best we can to look at the root of the conversation. And so when we talk about demons and talk about the actions and so forth, it's important to understand where that comes from, okay? The word demon comes from the Greek word daimon, D-A-I-M-O-N. And in Greek, it just means a supernatural being. Okay, lesser than divinity. In classical Greek, this is really very interesting. This word daemons was actually perceived as a guardian spirit, or as either just a spirit. Actually, it could be good or evil that was trying to influence the human psyche. So in other words, when you think of this word daemon from the Greek, it's almost, remember when you used to watch the cartoons and there would be a little red devil on one shoulder, and then you would have a little white one on the other shoulder, and they would be both talking in your ear, trying to influence which way that you would go. That is really more of what a daemon or demon was. Okay, it wasn't malevolent, it wasn't diabolical, it wasn't this scary, frightening thing that we think of now. As a matter of fact, the ancient Jews did not believe that demons, so to speak, were diabolical. They just thought they were mischievous. They thought they were little imps, impetuous, causing trouble and irritating and annoying you. That's all a demon was. Okay? There is this, because, I have had an opportunity to tacitly study some African spiritualities. And whenever there was this conversation about the spirit world, it is important that we look kind of at some of the African perspectives about spirituality. And I did that. There's this Ghanaian Pentecostal scholar. His name is Opoku. What is his last name? Opoku Onyinab. That's what his name is. Oniyab. Okay. And what he talked about in his study was that this idea that we have today concerning demons is this synthesis of like this Western idea about African spirits and witchcraft. So basically, the idea that we have of demons today, and I hate saying it like this, but I have found it to be true in a lot of my studies, it is a perversion. It is a white European perversion of how they see African spirituality and African spirits and African understandings about how they move in the spirit. Is that making sense to you? Okay. And so we have to understand from this Pentecostal and neo-Pentecostal perspective that we have here in the West, many of the ideas that we have grabbed a hold on and run with are actually white European perversions of perspectives of African spirituality. And so many of us don't understand a lot of times that the things that we are doing in our church come from a white supremacist perspective. And just because black people are doing it, it doesn't mean that it's not white supremacist. I hope y'all are hearing me. Okay? I gotta give it to you so you understand why we carry on many times the way we carry on. It doesn't come from us. But what we have done is taken another group's perspective and swallowed it hook, line, and sinker. And now we're doing all of these things and don't understand necessarily why we are doing those things. Okay. And so we have to go back and dig that thing up at the root. Our ancestors were not afraid of the spirit realm. As a matter of fact, our ancestors were most comfortable in the spirit realm. Do I have any witnesses in here? Our ancestors didn't carry on this way. Okay? And so I think when we understand that, when we know better, we will endeavor to do better. Okay? Let me move on. Okay? And so, Brother Onyinyab, again, says that this is really a synthesis of this Western perspective of African movings and understandings in the spirit. Okay. Now, I want to say something here so that you all are real clear. Because I know sometimes we can approach things from an academic perspective. And again, this is my challenge as a Pentecostal person who is also, endeavoring to be this theologian and move in the academy. It's almost like the two things sometimes don't go together. And so people sometimes think when I critique it or challenge it or go to the root of a thing, they think maybe I don't believe it. Okay. I want to make sure that you all understand I do believe there are evil influences in the world. I absolutely believe that. Okay. Now, what I believe about what I believe is a whole other deep dive that we don't have time for on tonight, okay? But I do want to make clear that I do believe that there are evil influences in the world. C.S. Lewis, who was a theologian from back in the early 20th century, C.S. Lewis, some of y'all know some of his books, but he was not only an author, but he was also this theologian. And paraphrasing here, C.S. Lewis says that there are two ends of the spectrums here. There are people who don't believe in the demonic, and there are people who are obsessed with the demonic. They're two ends of the spectrum, okay? And both of those people are out of order, okay? We have to have a healthy understanding of the spirit realm, but let me move on, okay? So the question that we got to deal with on tonight is, where does this fear come from? This Christian fear, this dichotomy, this chasm between our Christian faith and being crippled by this fear. Where does it come from? I'm going to say something that some of you may know instinctively. Some of you may have read it. Some of you may not know this at all. But fear is a tactic that is employed intentionally. It is employed by individuals who are looking to take advantage of and manipulate other folks. They understand that when someone is gripped by fear of any kind of threat, whether it's real, whether they have imagined it, their rationale and their cognitive capacities are diminished. When you are afraid, you are irrational. When you're afraid, you can't think clearly. And there are people in positions of power who understand that, and they take advantage of it. The two main culprits, the two groups of people who take most advantage of this, are politicians and preachers. I just said a whole mouthful. Politicians traffic in fear, fear-mongering. We see it right now. We're in a political season. There is one group, there is one person in particular that we could all name, but I don't like to say that person's name on my space. But that person traffics in fear. And what that person has done is riled up a whole group of people who are afraid of immigrants. They're afraid of the gay people. They're afraid of women. They're afraid of the color, people of color. They're afraid of anything that doesn't look like them. And guess what? On the flip side of that, there are preachers and pastors who have a whole other group of people who are riled up and who are afraid of anybody or anything that doesn't look like, sound like, praise like them. And they realize when you can get to someone's fear, the rationale goes out of the window. Their ability to think through things and think for themselves, it goes out of the window. And so when people are irrational and they can't think for themselves, it is easy to oppress them and lead them whatever way you want them to go. That's where it comes from. That's how so many of us in the church are fearful is because from the pulpit every Sunday and every Wednesday, we have been taught to be afraid. It doesn't make any sense. It is oxymoronic. Again, for us to have this great God that's got all power, why would we be afraid? And so I want to deal with that. I'm digging down into this Christian fear. I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna talk some more about some of the things that we saw in the movie, but I need us to really get to a place of fortitude and a place of clarity and strength and confidence in our faith so that we are not crippled by fear. Okay. So again, this fear has been used as a tool to manipulate. It has been used as a tool to oppress and suppress. Okay. Pardon me, y'all. And what this fear has done, this fear mongering, what it has done, it has caused many of us to be very superstitious. Okay. I know I keep bringing these words, these $20 words, $25 words, and I'm going to try to define them every time I use them. Okay. We're very superstitious, and superstition is basically the way you explain stuff that you don't understand. Superstition is this unfounded, unsupported belief in causation without any evidence. It's superstitious. If I don't understand it, I'll come up with something. You can't step on the crack, because if you do, you're going to break your mama's back. You can't, the black cats, and throw the salt over your shoulder, and all of these really odd, don't put your, what they say, don't sit your purse on the floor. Don't put your shoes on the bed. All of these things we come up with to try to explain phenomena in our lives that we don't necessarily understand. And instead of us taking the time to research and to dig and to pray and meditate to try to get understanding, as the scripture says, and all you're getting, get understanding. Instead of us trying to do that, we take these psychological shortcuts and we become superstitious. And these superstitions cause psychosis. I got some people, some therapists on here. Psychosis is basically detaching from reality. Our superstitions, our fears cause us to have psychosis where we detach from reality. My spiritual father, Bishop Carlton Pearson, used to say all the time that Christians have mental illness. I didn't understand, when he would first start saying that, I didn't really understand it. But in many regards, religion, period, does cause mental illness. And as a matter of fact, I put it in my notes. I read this other article, okay? And I do want y'all to know that I really do study before we have these times together. I was reading this article. The article is titled, "The Neurophysiological Process Involved in the Relationship Between Fear and Religion." Okay? The neuropsychological, I think I said physiological, but the neuropsychological process involved in the relationship between fear and religion. It was written by this researcher named Courtney Welsh Hortzman. She's a researcher at St. Benedict College and St. John's University. She wrote something interesting. I pulled a quote from the article. And y'all can go read that whole article for yourself, okay? Because you can Google it. It's out there, okay? She says, there are specific structures in the brain that contribute to an individual's psychological experience of fear. The structures that are strengthened when fear circuits are activated are developed at the expense of the development of the anterior cingulate cortex, the brain structure whose primary functions are to make judgments and formulate the emotions of empathy and love and compassion. Within the mind of the Christian, the question of God's primary characteristics influences the amount of gray matter, the actual substance in your brain, within each of these structures. So basically what she is saying is the more fear you have, the greater the development of what's called the amygdala. That's the fear center in your brain. So the more fear you have, the more gray matter or substance actually forms in your brain. That area gets bigger. But what it does is it takes away from the area of your brain where love and empathy and compassion are. And so the more fear you're fed, the greater that part of your brain becomes. And so you begin to process things from a place of fear instead of a place of compassion and love. So what happens is the more we are taught to be afraid, it actually changes the structure of our brain. In other words, people, I'm going to say it, and I don't mean to be offensive, but I'm going to say it. People who are afraid of demons coming through their television are suffering from brain damage. The amygdala is too big, and the ACC, the anterior cingulate cortex, is too small. It changes your brain. Read the research for yourself. This was not the design for us. We were not designed to be a fearful species. God has not given us the spirit of fear. And if we are made in the likeness and image of God, if God is not afraid, then why are we afraid? I hope you all are hearing what I'm saying. Fear is not natural for us. Not living in fear. Yes, fear has been given to us as a response to protect ourselves. If a big dog is coming or you're too close to the edge of a cliff, there is a fear response that causes you to process that information to save yourself, but you are not to live in a state of fear. It's not God's will for your life. Okay? And so again, when I look at my own Christian experience and when I look at the experiences of all of the people that I have come in contact with and had the fortune of knowing, most of us as Christians have been taught to be afraid. That's Black Christians, white Christians, Asian Christians. We've been taught to be afraid. First, afraid of God. A whole misunderstanding of what it means to fear God. Fear just means to respect, not to be afraid of. The last thing I want is my children, whom I love and would do anything for, the last thing I want is for them to be afraid of me. That's a dysfunctional relationship. And unfortunately, too many Christians, particularly Pentecostal and neo-Pentecostal Christians, have a very dysfunctional relationship with God. It's dysfunctional. I don't want to be in a relationship with somebody who threatens me if I'm not. That's called domestic violence. God is a God of love. And so should we operate from that place? And from love comes strength and security and clarity. But again, I digress. Many of us, again, are in these fearful places in our lives because we have been indoctrinated to be fearful. Okay? And so, again, we become superstitious. Again, we try to explain things that we don't understand, and we just kind of take these mental shortcuts and we just come up with stuff. And being afraid for many of us, again, is our natural place that we retreat to. And again, many brands of Christianity rely on you being uneducated and rely on you being afraid. I believe this. I believe that fear makes you see yourself as inferior. It makes you subject or subjected to people who are in power or power structures. When you're fearful, you don't fight back. When you're fearful, you run. When you're fearful, you're docile. And again, I want to say this has worked really, really well on Black Christians, because again, when we were brought to this land, most of us came from West Africa. We were not Christians. Yes, there was Christianity in Africa, but that was in Ethiopia on the east side where we came from. Most of us, our ancestors were not Christians. We became Christians when we got to this land and it was beat into us. And the expressions that we have of Christianity today, particularly in the Pentecostal and Neo-Pentecostal perspectives, okay, is this amalgamation. We wrapped African spiritual practices into Christianity. That's where the dance comes from. That's where the drums come from. That's where a lot of the things that we do in Black church, it comes from our African roots. But we did not come here Christians. We were made Christians out of fear and violence. But what I want to do is, again, empower us with understanding so that we don't have to be fearful. Okay? So there's one last thing I wanted to say about religion and that whole fear thing. Okay? Religion, and I'm not saying for everybody, I can't paint everybody with a broad brush, but for a lot of people, religion feeds us the fear and then turns around to try to feed us the cure for the fear. So it's the cause and the cure. Be afraid, be afraid, be afraid, but come back to church so that we can tell you about this Savior to save you from the thing that we just told you to be afraid of. You see how it's cyclical? You see how it keeps you like a hamster on a wheel? This is why some of us have to go to church every Sunday because, they tore you down and then you go out into the world and you're so afraid you got to come back so that you can try to get a little bit to build you back up. And it's unfortunate that the church has taught us to be afraid of demons and witches and the Illuminati and all of this stuff. They've taught us to be watchful and hyper-vigilant about all of these things. But what about Project 2025? What about our voting rights? What about the pedophile preacher? So we're afraid of all of the wrong things. Our attention has been turned to all of the wrong things. And it's one of the reasons that it leaves us, again, susceptible to things like these superstitions. Let me try to go on because I've been talking too long. The movie. I want to go back to the movie. And for those of you all who didn't watch it, I would encourage you to so that you can make some of these connections and kind of understand what we're talking about here. But in the movie, I told you the young lady moved into the house with her kids, and there's all this paranormal activity going on that basically we are led or coached to believe is demonic. Okay? But as I was watching the movie, I was paying attention, and I don't even know if this was subliminally written in or if it was just because of the way that I see things. I began to connect some dots. It said that as soon as they moved into the house, they began to have this experience with these demons. But I was looking at some other things that happened also when they moved into that house. One thing that changed from the last house to the new house is that when they moved in, Grandma moved in. Alberta, Glenn Close's character. She moved into the house with them. And when we are watching the movie, we see that the relationship between the main character, Andra Day's character, and the mom, Glenn Close, is very contentious. It's explosive. It is clear that there was a lot of trauma in that relationship. It's clear that Andra Day's character, she had been to prison. It's clear that she liked to fight. It's clear that she had a drinking problem. It's clear that she liked to cuss and fuss. You know, all of this stuff is going on with her. She's a very angry young woman. And we see this mother who we would call an old cougar, an old hoochie. You know, she's a woman of a certain age, but she is a character that many of us have seen before. Okay? And apparently, she found the Lord. She goes to church now. And although she goes to church, there is still some unaddressed stuff that's going on between her and her daughter. And so what I saw there is that when they moved into this house, the demons that apparently she thought she was seeing and experiencing was actually the demons, quote unquote, that were between her and her mother that resulted from unresolved trauma in that relationship. And if you've heard anything about generational curses, you understand that those curses generally are generation to generation to generation of people who have not dealt with their trauma. They have not dealt with their demons. And what happens is if grandmama don't deal with it, daughter's got to deal with it. If daughter doesn't deal with it, guess who gets to have to deal with it now? The children. And so as I was watching the movie, that's what I saw. What I saw is what I have seen in so many families. And what we do is we over spiritualize it and we take it to church and we take it to the altar and the preacher throws grease on us, but nobody ever goes and calls a social worker. Nobody ever calls a therapist. Nobody ever sits down and addresses the addiction. Nobody deals with the stuff that's the real clear and present danger. We're calling it demons because we don't understand it. We're calling it demons because now it is superstition. When the truth is if we were empowered with information, we would understand that these demons that they're dealing with is just unresolved family trauma. Are you hearing me? So that's what I saw in the movie. And as they are going through this process, they get to the end of the movie, and Anjanae Ellis's character, the apostle, who is supposed to cast the demon out, turns out that she didn't have any power because she went in trying to deal with it sideways. She was trying to deal with an issue that she was not capable of dealing with. And I want to speak to my fellow clergy here, because there are too many of us who are so egomaniacal that we think we can deal with all of these really deep-seated generational traumas that we have not gotten a degree for, we are not certified for, we don't understand these things, and some things are not spiritual at all. And the breakthrough that many of these families need is not going to come on the altar of the church. It's going to come on the couch at the psychiatrist's office. Hello, somebody. And so preachers, apostles, bishops, potentates, whoever whatever you call yourself, we've got to get to a place where we understand we do our people a disservice When we call something a demon, that is actually a part of a psychological or psychotic separation or break. When I was pastoring a congregation, I had 3 therapists on speed dial. If someone came into my office and they were dealing with something that I knew was beyond my education and ability, darling, I love you. And because I do, I want to recommend this therapist. And so what I saw in that, and again, I don't know if they wrote this in on purpose, but this is what I saw, is that there are a lot of preachers, pastors who believe they can address these generational traumas, and you are wholly unqualified to do it. I said what I said, and I hope you hear it in the spirit. We do our people a disservice when we think that we can put extra virgin olive oil on their forehead and it deals with generations of trauma. We can't do that to our people. Let me try to hurry up with this. We get to the end of the movie, and there is this great battle that she's in with these demons, and she's fighting them, and they're shape-shifting, and they're coming at her in different forms, and she sees her son as a demon, and she sees her mother as a demon. You know, some of y'all have seen the funny meme with Glenn Close looking all burned up and all of that kind of stuff. And basically, her mother as the demon in this fight really speaks to the fact that her mother still has this hate and this anger and this guile towards her daughter, and that lives in her daughter. But the last demon that showed up that she had to fight looked exactly like her. Y'all, I hope you're hearing what I'm saying. I hope you hear what I'm saying. The last demon that she was fighting with looked exactly like her. And when we get to the place where we understand, if we could just deal with that deep seated thing on the inside of us, that thing that we haven't addressed, that thing that we haven't rooted out, that there was no freedom. But here is the thing, and I don't want to shout right here, but I might. The movie was called The Deliverance. And it's crazy to me that so many folks who believe in deliverance were afraid to watch the movie. But the whole point of deliverance is to be freed from oppression. The whole point of deliverance is to get to the place of being able to live in liberty. It's about being free. It's not about what's going on in the hard place. It's about what happens after you deal with it, after you get through it. The deliverance is where we should be celebrating. And so it didn't make any sense to me for the super saved deep folks to be afraid of a movie called The Deliverance. I didn't agree with a lot of the theology in this movie. Again, I'm not here to critique all of that. I don't agree with scaring people into relationship with Jesus Christ. I don't believe in operating from a place of fear. I don't believe in those things. But I do believe in the intent of the movie to help people to see that when you deal with your demons, your inner demons, when you deal with those generational traumas, that there is liberty, there is freedom on the other side. And so I want to say this again to all of the people who may see this, who have not seen the movie yet. I want to encourage you. I want to give you a quick Bible study. James 4:7 says, "Submit yourselves therefore to God and resist the devil, and he will flee from you." So if you're afraid of demons coming through the television, you've got the power to resist that. Y'all ever realize that people who don't believe in demons don't ever have to fight with demons? Or people who understand that they have more divine authority than any imp or demon, that they don't wrestle with this kind of stuff. You've got the power to resist that. John 1:5 says, the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehendeth it not. In other words, the darkness cannot resist the light. The darkness cannot push back the light. And so if you are the light, or if you have the light of Christ in you, there is no darkness that you can encounter that can withstand you. Again, I said, if you have the light of Christ in you. I want to say this to you all. God has given us not just his power, but God has given us God's self. And what do I mean by that? I am a firm believer that I am made, according to Genesis 1:27, in the image of God. That means the characteristics that are present in the divine are the characteristics that are present in me. There is no evil that is greater than who I am. Not what I can do, not what I know. There is no evil greater than who I am. All I've got to do is show up knowing who I am. And there is no demonic force that can do anything to me or with me. I need you to know the same thing for yourself. So this dichotomy of Christian fear is removed with clarity of who you are in divinity. Whatever God is, I am. All right, I love y'all. I went over a little bit. I apologize for that. But again, if you haven't seen the movie, I challenge you to go and watch it. Or go and watch it again now that you've had this information. But I want you to understand that there is no reason for you to be afraid of anything. God is not only with you, but God shows up in the earth as you. Amen? Amen. Again, I want to challenge you all. Go over to YouTube. Watch all of the other videos. Subscribe. Click the bell for the notifications. I want to encourage you all as well, if you would. I spent a lot of time praying and studying for this, and I would love your support, your financial support. You can do that by going to Cash App or Venmo. It's Will Horn Ministries. You can go to Explore Will Horn, the website, and you can share your gifts there. You can also learn a little bit more about who I am and the things that I'm looking to do. I couldn't announce this last month, but I feel comfortable saying this to you now. And I actually will probably post the graphic tonight. But we are like this close to having the Shake the Table podcast ready for you all. Again, it's going to be ready on Spotify. It's coming on Apple Music. There's going to be so many ways that you can get your hands on this information, and it's happening because of your support. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. I appreciate your prayers. I appreciate your encouraging words that you send periodically. I'm just grateful to God that we have this space that we can share together, okay? So I love you guys. I will see you on the next first Thursday in November. And until that time, I pray that you would live a bold life, that you would not be gripped by fear, and that you would enjoy all the goodness that God has in store for you, okay? I love you guys. Y'all take it easy.